Shannen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I want to start by diving into your career. You have had an amazing career in film, and it started with Facing the Giants. I mean, that was the first big feature film for you, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. I had a little snippet in Flywheel. That's how I met the Kendricks. But yes, Facing the Giants was, gosh, that was it. That was the thing that set my career ministry in motion.
Well, and you mentioned something interesting there. You said ministry. And I want to talk about that because I think for a lot of people working in the faith-based film industry, this isn't just, like it is for other people working in Hollywood where it's, just a career or just an aspiration for the sake of having an aspiration. There's a deeper meaning behind what you do and why you do it. So I guess we'll start with why you wanted to move into this field.
Okay. Well, first of all, it was kind of crazy. I got married at such a young age. I mean, I was almost 19, but I was 18 years old. So I got married and had my babies. And then in my 20s, I started having some desire, like there is something churning inside of me that I want to do something more. And I wanted it to be in the acting field. But at that time, there was just not a whole lot that I wanted to do within the boundaries that I'd set for myself. And, but that desire just kept growing and growing. I don't know. I couldn't stop it. It just never would let up with me.
It was something God put in you, right? That you had this quest to do this.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now I know. Before I wasn't sure. I was just kind of like, what is this? Why do I love my life. I love being a wife and a mom. But then there was this thing that's like, there's more that you've got to do. And so God began, gosh, it was before 2004. It was back early to 2001 or so. God just really started planting that desire in me. And then it had to grow. It was just like a seed. And then it began to grow over the last 16 years.
Well, and you think about film back then and faith-based film, there wasn't a lot. I mean, you had the Passion of the Christ, and there wasn't a lot happening. It wasn't until about 2014. Obviously, there were films before that. We've talked about a couple of them, but 2014 was the explosion, the year of the Bible, as everyone referred to it. And that was really the first time you had more of these sorts of movies happening. So it's interesting that you felt that sort of urge and you started moving into that realm. Now, you mentioned Flywheel. Let's get back to Facing the Giants. So what was the journey and the pathway there? How did that come about?
Oh my goodness. It is kind of a wild story. My husband, he was a football coach, and we moved all over the place. We were, at the time, my hometown is Albany, Georgia, which is where the Kendricks are there now. That's their home, and that's my home as well. But my husband decided that he was going to get out of coaching. He wanted to make more money, that thing. And so we moved to North Carolina, and he went into a family business over there, which was really good, except for in 2 weeks after we got there, he's like, what did I do? I love my family, but I miss the guys. I was supposed to be on the field, but I was actually glad because it was kind of close to Wilmington and all of those things over there. So I was thinking that I was going to do this on my own. I was going to go over there. I was going to get an agent. They had a lot of WB stuff. I just didn't know. I was kind of playing with it. But the crazy thing is I wasn't really allowing God to guide me. I was kind of doing it on my own. And so believe me, every door shut. I failed at every attempt to do it on my own. And so finally, when it was time for us to move, after a full year of being over in that area, my husband is like, where are we going to go? What do you want to do? What area? I know, he was so for me to keep doing this or to pursue it. I said, let's go to a big town. Let's go to Atlanta. Let's do something that I can kind of pursue this. But he tried, and all the doors shut, except for moving me back to Albany, Georgia, which I did not want to go. There was nothing there.
You're probably thinking that's the last thing that I want to do. I want to be I want to be somewhere where I can,
Yes.
right.
So back
Have a
here
start.
in the South, we call it a hissy fit. And I had one. I was following that U-Haul, crying my eyeballs out. And I'm like, okay, I guess I made all of this up. And so we get over to Albany. Mama, daddy, everybody was so excited. And then Jimmy came home from a board meeting because he was the coach at Sherwood Christian Academy, head coach at that time. And he said, there's something buzzing about a film, and these guys are called the Kendricks. And they go to Sherwood. You should call them, Shannen. And I have to back it for a second. I mean, a couple of weeks before that, I was riding down this long country road it's called Old Pretoria, literally cows on one side and just hardly nothing on the other. And I'm like, you know what, God, you took me back to the country, and I don't have to be in film. I don't have to do this. I don't know why I feel this, but I give it to you. I give it all to you. I don't even know what I was doing back that whole year. But I'm sorry. I will be Mrs. Coach's wife forever. It's okay.
So you kind of said, like, I'm good. I'm good with whatever you have for me. You kind of at that point.
Yeah, because since you try to do it on your own, you're in a fight. God's like, okay, I'll let you go. I'll let you fight. And until you get so tired, then you go, okay, I need your help. And then, I think it was about 2 weeks. That's when my husband came home. And he's like, you need to call him. I'm like, a movie that a church is doing, really? So I called them, and they were doing Flywheel. And they said, why don't you come on set? We love to meet you, because Jimmy had, went on board at the school, and it's such a great little small community. And then I did, and they gave me a line or two. And then after that, I auditioned for Facing the Giants.
So I want to just back up to a couple of things. Okay. The first thing that makes me laugh a little bit, because it's like all of our stories, right? We try to do it on our own, and you kind of get to this point where you're like, you know what, God, whatever you have for me, if it's just to not do film, to do whatever it is here in the country, I'm good with that. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, plop, this thing comes in front of you that is at a church in Albany, Georgia, where you never would have imagined it being. And it's the very thing that leads you down the path that you wanted to go on that entire time, which I find completely incredible. And that's how God does things, right? We make plans, he laughs. And then, when we abide by him, he guides us along into what his path is. Can I ask what you would have done differently if you go back to when you were trying to do it on your own and the doors were slamming in your face? Right. Is there anything you would have done differently now if you could go back, and how you were sort of handling it at that time to align more with God?
I don't want to go back. I wouldn't go back and change it. And the reason is because I learned a lesson. Now I probably had to keep learning it through the last 16 years again and again, but that one stuck with me. That one was like, I love you, and I'm not going to force the calling that I put on your life. You have to yield to me. And I had to learn it. And so therefore, because I learned that hard lesson, I can pass it on to other people. And it reminds me when I try to keep doing it on my own again and again. Now, remember Facing the Giants. Remember what I did for you back then. I haven't changed, and I still got you. So I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change it.
That's great. That is a great answer. And I think there are so many times we learn these lessons in our lives, and you have those sort of benchmarks that you go back to. And for you, this is one of those benchmarks that you can go back to and say, God is always going to be there. He's always going to show up, and I don't need to rely on myself. I can rely on him. And I know that you've had a tough couple of months. You lost Jimmy a few months ago to ALS. And how have you and your family been during that journey?
Gosh, it's been a journey. I have to go back when he got diagnosed, which was March the 6th of 2020. I mean, let's add something else to 2020. And ALS is a fatal disease. There's no cure at all. But when he got diagnosed, I mean, our mind was made up. He's going to get healed on this side of heaven. Like why would we think anything else? And even though the odds were completely against us, that's just how we live our life. And so we went on this long battle from March the 6th, 2020, of, as a family, just watching my husband little by little lose his muscles and his arm function and his hand function, and on and on and on it went. There was a lot of amazing things through the hard time. I think as far as like a grieving, I think my family we started grieving March the 6th. It's because when they begin to lose functions and lose part of who they were, I mean, he was always Jimmy, but he couldn't hug me anymore. That was my first aha, like, okay, I'm grieving things. I'm grieving my husband hugging me. I'm grieving, and people don't understand that if they haven't walked through something this crazy. But we are a close family. I have 2 kids, and they are both married to wonderful spouses. And I mean, they didn't pretty much leave my side or our side. It was quite an amazing journey, and such a hard walk that we had to do. But we are healing forward is what we're doing.
Well, and I'm so sorry, for your loss. I know you also were navigating this as a family in the midst of one of the most unimaginably difficult times in, recent history, right? So you had the pandemic going on, and you found this diagnosis the same month that all of that was starting. Yes. Which I can't imagine those extra challenges and the extra pieces of the puzzle on top of everything that you were going through. And one of the things that really stuck out, and I've seen a lot of people comment on this, looking at your social media, seeing how you were inspiring other people throughout your journey as you were sharing what you and Jimmy and your family were going through. And in seeing those posts and seeing the reaction that so many people had to them, what for you has God shown you, in the midst of this? And I'm sure that's a very loaded question, because I know there's so many emotions and so much has gone on. But what have you learned, particularly about your faith and your relationship with God?
Gosh, the first thing which I knew this, but the first thing that comes to my head is, this is not our home. I mean, we are temporary on this earth. Those that are believers and they're going to believe that Jesus is coming back to get us. Gosh, I knew this before, but it's almost like it's just like bright everywhere I look. I'm like, this is not my home, but my goodness, God put us on this earth. He left me and my kids here. We have a mission. I mean, it's almost like we're on a mission. So what is that mission? That mission is to love people big, to take people with us. I don't know. I don't know if is that answering your question?
It does. I mean, we're all so distracted by so many things, right? And so as Christians, we know there's an eternity, that something matters more than what is here. But yet, because what is here is so distracting at moments, and some of it's wonderful, right? And some of it's challenging, and we get so in the moment that I feel like we forget that not only, I mean, you said a couple of really important things there, not only that this is a temporary space, right? This is not our final, and we're going to spend so much more time in eternity. And just the importance of bringing other people along with us and loving people. And there's so much, I mean, culture is so messy right now, and that's distracting too. And so what you spoke to is so powerful. So really this showed you that and brought that more home to you, it sounds like.
It did. And so my husband, his saying was always, live this day. Today you're in right now. Don't miss today, but in view of that day. And that day is when we're called home to be with Jesus. So live this day, and then in between, while you're viewing for that day, take a whole lot of people with you and love a whole lot of people. I just don't, there's so much drama. There's so much stuff going on. I don't even watch the news anymore. I don't want to be, I know what's going on in my world. I'm not like don't want to know. I do want to know what's happening, but that's not going to be my focus. It's like my focus has, I don't know, and you have the little dimmer lights, for an example, and you have it really dim. That's kind of how I was walking. And then now it's just turned all the way to high volume. It's like, I'm seeing this picture. It's like Easter. It was like Resurrection Day. Just meant a little bit special to me, a little bit more than I did before. It's like the light just came on really bright for me.
It changes everything. It changes the way you see everything and the way you live, right? I think a lot of us are in that fog. We're in that sort of just the day to day, and what you're speaking to is so important. It's such an important reminder. And your career, you have a lot going on too. I know you're busy. And again, when I use that word career, I know for you, it's a mission field too, right? That there's an impact to what you're doing. And when you think about that, and I know your husband also was obviously instrumental just in hearing your story and not only getting you into this by saying, make that phone call, but also supporting you throughout this. And so moving forward with your career, what do you hope for? What do you want to accomplish through the films and the shows that you perform in?
Gosh, I had someone ask me, because I jumped on set like a month after he passed away, and somebody said, how can you do that? Like, how do you feel? And I said, I didn't know how I was going to feel. But when I was on set and what I was actually doing and the show I was doing, it had so much purpose to touch so many lives. And so to answer that question, I am going to live my life in such a way that I hope that I can love so many people that I'm not going to judge the person. I have definitely biblical standards, but my job is not to judge them. I'm going to love them. I'm going to do as many things as I can within film and TV and speaking, that I can inspire that woman or that man or that child to take another step, to if they're in that, because we live in such a world that, the weight can just be so heavy. I want to be that person that can maybe take a little bit of that weight off. I can't solve all the problems in that person's life, but I want to, whoever God puts in my path, that's what I want to do for them. I want to inspire them to live the life that God intended them to live, and that give them the inspiration to do more actually than they think they can. And that doesn't mean that you don't do it afraid, because most of the stuff I do it afraid, but it's okay. So dream big, bold, but just never quit. My husband had a saying that it has been around for years and years and years, and so many people, all the kids at the school, all the football players, it's called War Win. It's we are ready, worship God, inspire others, and never quit.
I like that.
Going to live by War Win.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I just have, a couple of more questions for you. So May is obviously ALS Awareness Month, and it may not be ALS for people though. They may have found out some other news that is life altering, or they're at the start of where you were on March 6th of 2020, where you're getting this news and you're trying to process it. What would your message be to those who, and maybe even especially with ALS, who are just finding this news out, and they know they're going to be embarking on a journey, but they're in shock and they're not sure where to turn?
Yeah. So turn to God, get on your knees, get in the word, worship. That's what we did. That's what our whole family did. My husband, he walked almost the entire time until he got in the wheelchair, and it's just his legs collapsed. Actually, he collapsed in my arms. It just gave way. But I mean, all the way until God took him home. We had worship music on. We laughed together. We hugged. We told stories. We lived life to the fullest. You can't stop. See, what the enemy wants to happen is when there's a diagnosis like this, to put the brakes on and to stop living, to stop laughing. You got to enjoy every moment. That's where you got to live for today. Because if I took myself and thought about 3 or 4 or 5 months from now, what can happen? And yes, that does go through your mind. I mean, there's Google, you can read it, this could happen. But the most important advice is to live for today, to laugh, to tell stories, to look at pictures, to worship together as a family. And one of the things we did as a family is communion. It's just something that we wanted to do together. Yes, I wish I could kiss his head, kiss him one more time, hug him, but he is healed. He is healed. God just chose to heal him over there. So can he heal on this side? Absolutely. So you should never lose hope in that. Yes, he can. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to love right where you are. And yes, if it's hard, but still, if you don't, then the enemy is just going to take your days. It's going to weigh you down even more. So we did. I mean, Jimmy would bring up stories and we would just laugh, and because we're crazy sometimes over here. And but we made sure, and my husband also did too. He made sure that he laughed a lot. And laughter is a medicine. It's what it says in the Bible, right?
It is.
I guess live today, live it out full, even in the hard mess. Yeah. That
is such a good word. And I wanted to just close on a little bit of a sort of a preview note, because there's a really inspirational, amazing project that will be coming to Pure Flix later on this year. And it's called Rebuild and Restore. And I just wanted to see if you might be able to give us a little teaser of what that's going to look like.
Only God could do this. I have to tell this little story. Before Jimmy got diagnosed, I was cast to co-host Rebuild and Restore. So Rebuild and Restore is centered around James 1:27, where we're instructed to help the widows and the orphans. So it is a home fix-it show that fixes something in the house. That's my co-host, Ken Fletcher. He does that part. And mine is to kind of restore something in their heart. And little did I know that during the making of the 3rd episode, I was going to lose my husband and become a widow. Sorry. So, okay. The team was like, Shannen, and they were all at Jimmy's celebration. And I call it a life celebration. It was on the football field. There were just over 1,000 people. A lot of them were young men of all ages that he coached and their families. And we celebrated his life. But they were there, and their comment after, they said, Shannen, we thought we cashed you. We thought that, was our deal. But it was very evident that God has a plan. And he knew this was going to happen in your life, and he needed you to touch. He needed you in this space of this TV show to touch lives, that you can connect with these other widows. But the thing is, I may be helping them, but they're also helping me. One of the widows is my sister. She is one of the episodes. She lost her husband a year and a half before I lost Jimmy. So we've had a lot of tragedy with that in our life, but we hope this show will make you laugh and cry, and it will inspire you and so many people to not just love and care for widows and their children and orphans, but just to do good and what God commands us to do to help one another and love our neighbor. So it's exciting. I can't wait for everybody to see it.
Well, listen, I so appreciate you sharing about Jimmy and your journey and your career today. And I'm very excited to also see Rebuild and Restore. Again, thank you. Thank you for all you do and for your ministry.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all you do. You do so much in the ministry as well.
Well, we'll have to have you back to talk more about Rebuild and Restore once the show launches.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.